Hey, my name is Cameron Wonchoba. I work for Allianz Life as a data scientist. So first, let me just explain what Allianz Life is. So Allianz Life is an insurance company that provides two main products, annuities and life insurance. You might be asking yourself, what are annuities and what is life insurance? Well, I'll just explain that really quick before we move on. So annuities are basically something that allows someone to give Allianz Life some chunk of their money when they're younger, and then Allianz Life will essentially help them grow that money, and basically Allianz Life will keep that money, help them grow it, and then when that person retires, Allianz Life will then provide periodic payments to that person, which essentially guarantees income for the rest of their life. This is super helpful to somebody who retires because they're no longer making any more money. So this is a source of income that basically Allianz could provide for them. So that's what annuities are. Life insurance, on the other hand, essentially allows someone to pay a monthly fee to protect, quote unquote, protect their life. What does that mean to protect your life? Well, essentially, it means that someone has purchased an Allianz Life annuity. Well, basically, if that person purchased the life insurance, essentially what happens if that person dies is that Allianz Life will pay a large sum of money to that person's family. So essentially, you're putting insurance on your life. Okay, so now we know what Allianz Life is, and we know that I'm a data scientist. You might be asking yourself, what do I actually do now? What do I do as a data scientist? So essentially, at a really high level, what a data scientist is essentially somebody who uh, is really good at programming, good at communication, and good at statistics. And why do you need all those skills? Well, essentially, what you're doing is you're using past events and examples to predict for future events. Uh, and you do that using something called machine learning, or in you might have heard it called artificial intelligence. So that's what I do, but I'm not working on the big, cool self-driving cars or anything. Instead, I'm actually doing this within an insurance perspective, from an insurance perspective. So what do I do on the daily? What's my everyday day look like? Well, I start off the day by looking at emails. And basically emails, and then we also do a lot of meetings. So essentially, emails are me looking and trying to source data out, talking to experts about their domain that they're experts in, getting questions answered, and getting items to get and to do. And meetings are kind of the same thing, but just face to face. You're understanding requirements, talking about projects, trying to understand data more from a data science perspective. So really, meetings and emails are just me trying to communicate with the business about the project that we're trying to complete and trying to get enough information to be able to actually complete the project. Once I get enough information, I can actually get into programming. And so from a data science perspective, there's really specific type of programming that you're working with. I work with Python specifically. That's the language that I work with a lot, as well as a little bit of SQL. And essentially what I'm doing with programming is I'm really exploring the data, running some statistical tests on that data and trying to understand what this data is. And then I'm wrangling with it to clean it up and make it into a nice format. Why am I wrangling this data to make it into a nice format? Well, essentially, machine learning models that we're building here, they accept numerical input that has to be clean. In practice, a lot of data is not numerical. You might describe something as red, and I might describe something as blue. How do we convert those to numbers? Well, there's a lot of techniques that you can do to convert those different descriptions into numbers, and that's what I'm doing with this whole programming part of actually wrangling with the data and making it into a nice format. Once you have this data into a nice format, this is when we can actually start building machine learning models. We can test out a whole bunch of different algorithms and things like that. And basically using my past knowledge of machine learning as well as kind of like a research and development style, basically do that. You can train a bunch of models and pick which one performs the best. Um, and then once we have a model that's performing well and is quite predictive, we're able to predict something. We can actually then, what I would do is automate this model so people can get real-time predictions. So, as an example, what I'm working on right now actually is fraud prediction. So, essentially, without getting too much into the details, we have some online registrations happening. People, you might go register for an account at Allianz, and essentially, what my job is to do is to predict whether your registration was considered fraud or not. So we have a whole bunch of data points that we can feed into a machine learning model that I've developed to predict whether you are acting as a fraudulent person or not. If you are, you'll have a high probability of being fraud, which then we can uh, send to the business. And what the business does with that information of you're likely to be fraud is they'll reach out to you to ask if you actually register for an account. So, what is my day to day? Basically, emails and meetings and programming, building models, and communication. So, as a data scientist, the four main things that you need are communication, programming, statistics, and you just need an interest in data. So, now that we have an understanding of what I do, you might be wondering, well, how did I get here? Well, I'll kind of start back in high school really briefly. So in high school, I was an honor student and I was in the AP courses. I had a job just working at Subway as a sandwich artist, things like that. Um, and then I got into college. I went to the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. And my goal when I started college was I was going to be a biomedical engineer. The reason why I was going to do that is because I liked biology from high school. I liked math and I knew I wanted to help people. So I was going through the motions of completing or getting my biomedical engineering degree, but then I realized that I didn't like biology as much as I did in high school. And so as a result, I decided to switch my major to computer science after a lot of soul searching. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I just decided to try computer science. And I realized that I actually fell in love with computer science. So essentially, what I did was I quickly decided to learn about, or so I just was taking all my classes and I decided to learn about different areas of computer science. Basically, I was exploring what can I do with this computer science degree. And what I discovered was one of the options was data science. And I was like, oh, what is data science? So I started to explore data science a little bit more. And I realized this is exactly what I wanted to do. This looked really interesting, providing insights for your company, doing machine learning, all using computer science concepts and things like that. Great, that's what I wanted to do. So what I did was I applied for a bunch of internships. My junior year, I applied for a bunch of internships that were related to data science. And I got rejected dozens of times. But then I finally got a lunch with a company. This wasn't an actual interview, but it was really just a lunch. They invited me for lunch, and I actually got the opportunity to talk with their lead data scientist. And essentially, he was just talking about data science at Allianz. But then I asked him a question, and I asked him how he got into data science. What did he do to get into data science? How he's at this super high position of lead data scientist now. How did he get there? And he told me about his very first project that he did. His very first project he did was he created a smart quote unquote tic tac toe game. He programmed up a game to play tic tac toe, and then he made a computer that was smart. So essentially, the tic tac toe would be able to beat you, given that you're not going to end up in a draw. So essentially, he created that tic tac toe game, and then he told me all about that. And so what I did was I went home and I actually, after that lunch, I went home and I actually implemented that tic-tac-toe game from scratch right then and there. I was like, oh, this is a good application of data science. Let me go and do this. Shortly after that, they invited me for an interview and where I got to talk about my smart tic-tac-toe that I implemented from his idea. And they really liked it and they ended up hiring me. So I worked there for about a year and a half while going to school. And so for a year and a half, I was doing an internship in data science and data engineering things. So I was doing a whole bunch of projects there, and they ended up offering me a job, but I actually turned it down to start a new position at Allianz. And so at Allianz, I started out as not a data scientist, but I actually was pursuing a bunch of data science projects. And eventually, what happened was because I was doing all these data science projects, the data science team saw what I was doing, and they were really happy with what I was doing. And now I'm a data scientist. So essentially, I just searched for data science jobs, and that's what I did. So that's kind of my background.